worry about moving around. Screen. All right, so it is with absolute pleasure that I introduce Rose to you from from Ubisoft. Rose has actually worked on a few games, and Ubisoft is quite a big studio, so hold on to your seats. She's a gameplay programmer, and she's worked on Assassin's Creed Rebellion on mobile. If my wife were here, she would totally flip out.
It's not as exciting as it sounds.
She loves Assassin's Creed. She's also working on the Assassin's Creed project for Netflix, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And she's
not out yet, though.
It's not out yet, no. We're all going to have to hold on. And she's also organized a lot of game jams and has been so kind to help us organize this one. And today she's going to talk to you about cutscenes. There's some Unity beginner tutorial as well. It's unfortunately the way the scheduling worked is the Unity beginner tutorial person is actually presenting tomorrow. So stick around for that. But this tutorial is recorded. So if you have any questions after watching the Unity beginner tutorial, or if you have concerns about how do I do this, or I need the background information, you can revisit this tutorial. So without further ado, I will let Rose take over.
Okay.
And yeah,
let me just find my PowerPoint here. I think it's just going to be easier if I present it like this, because I'm going to be switching back and forth to Unity project and the PowerPoint. But yeah, so thanks for coming, everyone. As you've heard, my name is Rose, and today I'm going to be presenting to you a feature that is offered by Unity called Timeline. This feature, if you're going to do the game jam this weekend, is actually something that me personally, I would have loved knowing about when I went to other game jams in the past, because it allows you to do cutscenes and dialogues and tutorials and a lot of useful things that could really spice up your game. And people will be playing your game are going to be really impressed if they start playing your game and they see a cool cutscene and stuff like that. So yeah, this is why I'm doing this presentation, because I think it will be really useful for you guys to make your game really cool. So like I was going to say earlier, this is a semi-beginner friendly tutorial, because this is a feature that's already given by Unity. There's a lot of already built-in functionality, but it also, there's the ability to make your custom tools using it as well. That will be a bit more technical. There's coding involved. I'm not going to go too much into code, but I'm going to show you the main functions in class that you need to pay attention to in order to be able to do this. Yeah, let's start this tutorial. The agenda. We're going to first off see different ways that you could use Timeline in your game. I'm going to show some examples. After, we're going to go and show how to set up a timeline in a scene. And then we're going to see the built-in features. Like I said, these are features that are already offered by Unity. So there's tracks and clips, animation, using the camera, moving it around. There's object activation and deactivation. There is something called a control track, which basically, in short words, allows you to put a cutscene within a cutscene. And there's also event signals and markers, and there's also the ability to manipulate sounds. And then after that, we're going to go on to see how you can code your own custom timeline features. So I'm not going to go, and there's a little star here. That means I'm not going to go too much into detail over there because I don't have the time. But yeah, playable assets, what they are. Then track assets, clip assets, playable behavior, and then I'll show an example. This is all gibberish to you right now, but we'll see as we go on. And then finally, I'll show limitations of the tool, because if you're going into it the first time, you might be really confused as, well, why is this not working? I'll show you different ways that could halt you in that way. Okay, so like I said, the different ways that you could use Timeline in your game is cutscenes. You could use it for dialogues, and you could also use it for in-game events. So for example, if you want to show focus points, like an objective, You could use it to do tutorials, like a very quick tutorial. Usually tutorials are kind of the last thing on our minds when doing game jams, because it's like an extra level of game design that you have to do. You have to do an extra level just for the tutorial. But if you use a timeline, you could probably just quickly show, oh, if you want to attack, you have to press this button. Like it's very quick. And then, yeah, you could use it for objects if you want to, I don't know, if you pick up a coin, you want to have like a particle effect, you have a certain noise, and I don't know, maybe you'll make your character grow. You could do stuff like that too. And you could also use timeline to do environmental changes. For example, you enter an area and it starts raining and lightning, whatever you want. So yeah, I'm just going to show you a quick example of different ways that we could use timeline. So first of all, I'm just going to give credit. So this is not my project. I did not do this from scratch. This is a Unity project that you can find online. I'll send you the link to the YouTube video that uses this project. I just added a little bit of extra stuff on it. So, all right, so if I press play, for example, oh, this is not the right scene that I wanted to show first. Give me a second. This is what I wanted to show. Okay. All right, so for example, is there a sound? Here's an example of like a, oh. It seems that working properly. I did not have the time to test the project before coming, so excuse me for that. I'm going to show you another one. All right. Okay, so here you go. There's like a focus point on the character here before being able to. This is like an FPS, like a strategy game before going and controlling your character. You can also see like the environment changed and stuff like that. And then here's like a cutscene. This is like maybe you want to do an intro to a level. You can do this type of stuff. None of these characters are like individually animated. It's actually using kind of gameplay instructions. So it's basically just telling these characters to move from one position to the other, and then the AI is doing everything on its own. Let's see if this one will work. It didn't work the first time. Crossing my fingers. Okay, there you go. I don't know why it didn't work the first time. So here's a little dialogue sequence, and you could implement. You could like press spacebar to progress the dialogue, and you could see there's like different camera panning and whatnot. All right, that's pretty much it. Okay, and I wanted to show, I also made my own custom example. You could also use this if, for example, you make a game and you want to talk to NPCs, interact with NPCs, you could do something like that. But there you go. So you talk to the NPC, and then you go back to the normal gameplay, and then you could go back and talk to them again. And yeah, that's basically the functionality here. Okay, so that's what you can do. I hope that is pretty cool. I think that's pretty exciting. So now I'm just going to show you really quickly how to set up a timeline in your scene. So the first thing you have to do is create an object with a playable director component. And then after you have to create a timeline. And then after you have to save it in an appropriate folder. So I'm just going to show that really quick. It's super simple. You create a empty object. You could name it whatever you want, timeline. And then here in the object inspector, you add a component, and then you search for playable, I'm having a hard time typing. Playable director, there you go. And then once this shows up, you could go on window. I noticed that my timeline is not here. To open the timeline window, you go here on window, then you go on sequencing, and then timeline, and then it will open here. So now that we have a playable director, it will prompt you to create a timeline. So you just click the button there, and then you could save it wherever you want. So I would suggest to create like a timeline folder, but yeah, name it however you want, and then save it. And then you'll see there's a progression of time going on. So the timeline in general, I'm just going to show you an example of what it looks like when completed. It's kind of reminiscent of a timeline that you'd see in like a video editor or an audio editor. But since it does a lot of things for game components, it's a lot more flexible and you could do a lot of things. So yeah, it's very straightforward. You have like the progression of time in either frames or seconds, and then you put your behaviors that you want to do. For example, you want to activate an object, and then you can lengthen or shorten the amount of time you want that behavior to happen, like that. And yeah, it's very easy to work with. It's very kind of like synchronous and visually kind of obvious. So yeah, that's pretty much all it is. Yeah, so now I'll just go through what are the different behaviors that we could do with it. So the first thing, well, I'm just going to go over actually first what are the elements of a timeline. So tracks and clips. Not all behaviors we'd want in a timeline requires a track, which is basically a row that has usually it's like asks you for a reference for something, and then that row or track will hold individual clips. So you can have multiple clips per track. I'm just going to show you here. For example, I have this animation track here, and you can see this is a clip. That's another clip. Those are just two different animations. And all right. So the track header contains the name of the track and its binding information. So the binding information, like I said, there's a reference here. This is basically just asking you what object do you want to manipulate. So if you want to animate a player, you would just drag and drop the object onto it. So yeah, whatever happens within that timeline is going to execute on the player. And then once you've added your binding references, it will be added to the playable director. I don't know. Let's see here. So for this timeline, you'll see that all of the bindings are going to be added here as well. That's done automatically. Usually you just kind of drag and drop, and then it will get added automatically. All right. And and also a cool functionality of the track is that you could organize it as well. So where's my project? So not only can you name your tracks however you want when you click them, but you could group them like this. So as you can see, this is a lot of different behaviors going on for this bomb group. Just collapsible and well organized. Okay. And like I said, clips are what actually execute the behaviors. So timeline is a purely linear feature. So you can't put two clips one over the other. If you want to put two behaviors for, let's say, a player at the same time, you have to make 2 tracks. You can't put 2 clips on top of each other. And that kind of makes sense because if you can't really you can't like tell a character to do like the same, like 2 animations at the same time. Like Unity is gonna get confused, like which animation do you actually want me to do? So you'll see that like it will just prevent you from doing that. And also a lot of these clips, not all of them, but at least for animations, cameras, and sounds, you can blend them. So maybe you can't put them on top of each other, but you could do a nice smooth transition between each other. And to do that, all you have to do is to kind of merge it into each other like that. You'll see that there's like a little kind of progression going on there. That's the blending. There, put that back there. Okay. Next slide. Okay, so yeah, now I'm going to go on to different built-in features. So the first one is the animation, probably the one that's going to be the most used. Basically, animation on the track header here. It requires an animator component. So, well, you need to put your object here, but that object needs an animator because it needs some sort of script to tell it what to do once the clip happens. Because an animator, quite simply, is this component here. And again, this is like something that you can just add component, animator, and you'll find it right there. So yeah, that's what is needed. And then there are 2 options for types of clips that you can do. So the first one is you can do a recording direct. Oh, you have a question?
Yeah, how do we know which animations to execute on the animation?
It actually it's kind of interesting. So as you know, maybe that animators usually have different states for animations to tell the character to do, depending on like different conditions. It will do a different animation, and it'll use the animator to decide what animation to do. But what is interesting is that once you actually use an animator track, there is a kind of an invisible animator. It kind of creates invisible animator states on top of your animator that you won't be able to see, but it has its own kind of behavior. It overrides actually whatever happens in the animator, the default one that you have on your character. So it's all kind of done in the back end. You can't really see it happening, but that's what happens. And so yeah, I hope that answers your question. So yeah, back to where I was. Yeah, there's 2 options to create clips. The first one is that you can actually record directly into timeline. So I don't know if you've noticed, but the track has like a little red button, and that once you press that button, it actually allows you to record whatever animation that you want. So if you want to move your character from one position to the other, you can record, and then I'll show you in a second actually. And then the second option is to use a animation clip using pre-made animations that you might have. So if you have a dancing animation that you've got from your artist or something, you can use that directly as well. So I'm just going to show that right now. So, all right, so to create a new track, you right-click on the left side of your timeline, and then you'll see all of the different options. Right now, I want to just do an animation track like this. Actually, I'm not going to use this. Where's my delete button? I'm going to use my new timeline here, just so I don't like mess with my other. How do I move? Okay. All right. So if, for example, I want to move my little NPC from one position to the other, all I have to do is an animation track like this. and then I drag and drop my NPC onto the binding reference here. And then, like I said, I could do a recording. So I'm just going to press this red button, and then it says recording. And then all I have to do is, I'm just going to take my character, and I'm going to add key. So I'm just going to tell it, okay, my first position is going to be here. I'm going to add the key. And then my second position, I want my character to be over here, let's say. Oh, actually, it does it automatically for you. So, and then as you will see, the animation is going to move my character from one position to the other. So if you want to move your characters like that, that's how you would do it. Once I finish my recording, I could press the red button. And then there's something really cool that you could do. Is it's not very intuitive, I guess, to just have the keys directly on the timeline like this, and to move it around. So what you can do is right-click on your track, and then there's an option that says convert to clip track. And there you go. It will look like a normal clip like any other. And you could move it around. You can resize it. You could blend it with other animations. You could do whatever you'd want to do with like a normal animation clip. And then if, for example, you want to modify your animation, all you have to do is right-click again on the track and then convert to infinite clip, and I'll reconvert it back to the recording. So yeah, pretty useful. And then, like I said before, the other way of adding an animation is right-clicking on your track, and then you add, there's this button here, add from animation clip. And then here you go, there's all of the options for animations. This is all of the animations in this project, there's a lot of them, but you can choose whichever you want, and it will just get added to your game. And like I said, you could like blend it with the other one. All of the other functionality is going to work. And then there's also like options in the clips, and one of them is the animation extrapolation. So it's post extrapolation, which controls how the animation is gonna like behave during the gaps between different animation clips. So basically, let's say here, if I click here, you'll see that there's post-extrapolate and pre-extrapolate. Right now it's on hold, which means it's just gonna stay in that position and not do anything until the end of the timeline. But there's also other options like loop. So loop is just gonna go back and forth. Your character is gonna, if it were to like walk like that, it's gonna walk like this, and then it's gonna go backwards, and it's gonna go forwards until the end of the timeline. Oh, actually that's ping pong, my bad. Ping pong is forward and backwards. There's loop, which he's gonna go to his position, and he's gonna go back to his initial position, and he's gonna walk to his final position, and then back again on loop. And then continue, basically, to put it into small detail, if your track, let's say this animation, you shorten it to the smaller amount of time than the animation actually lasts, you could do continue, and it will just continue the animation no matter how long this clip is. It's just gonna do it until it finishes. All right, that's pretty much it for animation. The next one is Cinemachine, or cameras. So Unity has a package called Cinemachine, which basically allows you to do some cool effects with cameras. So if you want to focus on a different area, or you want to do like a visual effect that makes the scene all gray, you could do that with Cinemachine. It has a lot of functionality. But Timeline utilizes Cinemachine to basically manipulate shots. Because a cutscene, there's different shots. It's kind of like doing a cinema. It's kind of doing a film. It's like doing a film. So here, To add the Cinemachine track, all you do is the same process. You right click and then you click on Cinemachine track. And then here, all you have to do is drag and drop your virtual cameras. Virtual cameras are, like I said, these are the shots. So this shot, for example, is focusing on my player, like that. So if I want to add that shot, all I have to do is drag and drop my shot like that. And once this little playhead arrives to this clip, it's gonna go to that shot, basically. Like animations, you could also blend cameras if you want to kind of smoothly go from one shot to the other. You could also add a shot by right-clicking on the track like this and add camera shot. And then you could just put your virtual camera in this field here. But basically, yeah, you could blend it as well. Pretty self-explanatory. In this example here, I did it a couple times. Did I show it? Oh no, it's on the dialogue time. Here you go. I have like these 3 shots and it's blending between them. Yeah, that's pretty much it. There's not much to say. Cinemachine itself has like a lot of complexity. You can do a lot of things, but this is not the focus of this presentation. So yeah, you'll have to do some research yourself to see what kind of cool things you could do with that. But yeah. All right, the next one is the object activation and deactivation. This one is also very self-explanatory. It just activates your object. That's it. So on the track header, all you have to do is the object that you want to activate. And then when you add a clip, when the playhead reaches the clip like that, it will activate your object. The only difference for this track type than the other ones is that you might have seen that the settings for the Cinemachine and the animation tracks were on the clips. So there's like the settings here, but if I click on the head of the track, there's pretty much nothing here. And the same thing goes for the Cinemachine here. If I click on this head, there's no options here, but there's plenty of options on the clip. But for the activation track, I'm gonna put an activation track right here. The clip has no options, and options are on the track head. So there's this post-playback state. There's 4 options. Active, this is just going to tell you what's going to happen when the clip reaches its end, when the playhead reaches here. So it's either going to activate your object, or leave it active. It's either going to deactivate your object. It's either going to revert it to what it was before the cutscene started, or it's going to leave as whatever state it is currently in the cutscene. And that's pretty much it for that one. Next one is sounds. So this one is also very simple. This allows you to put sound effects or music into your cutscene. On the header, you just click the sound clip that you want. Usually like an MP3 sound clip, and then it requires an audio source from your. Oh, no, it's not the sound clip. It's an object that has the sound clip. So yeah, it requires the audio source from the game object as a binding reference. And yeah, and then this one has both options for the track header, I'll show in a second, and it has settings for the clip itself. I'm going to show you that. All right, if I right click, I'm going to put audio track. And then I'm going to put a audio source, explosion, I guess. And then, so explosion is, where's my timeline? All right. So the screen is so small. All right, explosion is this prefab here, and there's an audio source on it. And I'm gonna right click and create an audio clip, and then I have rain, for example. I could put that, and there you go. It's a very long clip. So like I said, on the track header, there's a couple of options. So there's a volume. This is going to control the volume of all of the clips within that track. There's the stereo pan. This just controls like if the sound is coming from your left or right ear if you're wearing headphones. And then spatial blend. So this is utilizing like the 3D space in your game to control how the sound is going to behave. So if, for example, you want you're talking to a faraway character and you want it to seem that the character is far away, you could use the spatial blend that will like realistically kind of project the sound from a distance. It also does cool stuff, I think, like Doppler effect. So if you're moving while the sound is playing, it will like kind of do a Doppler effect type thing. I've never tested with it, but yeah, apparently you can do that, which is pretty cool. And then on the clip itself, there's also these settings here. So which audio clip that you want to play, if you want to loop it, and the volume. Very, very simple. And yeah, that's pretty much it for that. All right, the next one is control track. So like I said at the beginning, this is a special type of, oh, you have a question? Just a quick question, yeah. Is it possible to split clips? Split them? No. Oh, no. Yeah. No, yeah. I've never had to do that, but I think you could probably do custom clips that gives you the ability to do that, but like none of the built-in ones allow you to do that. Yeah, so, all right, I'll come back to this. So yeah, at the beginning I said the control track kind of gives you the ability to play a timeline within a timeline. So usually I kind of like using this for organizational purposes because sometimes a timeline could get pretty bulky if there's a lot of things going on, and it's kind of good to kind of put them in a compact control track. So yeah, this one actually doesn't have any binding references here at the top for the track. It's just the binding reference is on the clip itself. And yeah, let's see. Oh, I'm just going to say this here. So no, I'm going to show you an example. All right. So for example here, let's say, let's say I want to make a timeline. I'm going to do a quick one here. Actually, no, I'm just going to use a pre-existing. Okay, for example, let's say in this timeline, I want to, at the end of my cutscene, I want to play whatever was happening on my timeline that I created here. All I have to do is drag and drop, like that, and then add clip with control track, like that. So this clip contains this. Contains that, and yeah, you'll see that the reference is here. And you could also there's also settings here, but they're not really important. I never really use them. It's kind of weird. I don't even know why it's there. This one, for example, it will create a prefab when it reaches its end. I don't know why you would want to do that, but it has that ability. So yeah, and then if I double click on this clip, it will show my timeline. Maybe I should have named it something else, but yeah, there you go. It's the same timeline, as you can see. So yeah, that's it for control track. Let me delete that there. So yeah, you could do control tracks for anything that has a playable director component. You could do it for particle systems if you want to do a nice explosion like I showed like in my my little cutscene. Anything that inherits from this interface, iTime control. So I guess you could do your custom, like time-related stuff. And then any object that has where its children have any of these components. But yeah, like I said, it can instantiate a prefab. I don't know why, but that's a setting that you can have. And yeah, you could also control what happens to the timeline when it reaches its end. So either you keep it active, you can deactivate it, or you could revert to its initial state. All right. Where were I? Where am I? Okay. I'm not going to go too much into signals and markers because it's a little bit more complex. But basically, essentially, you can make a signal track where the track header is a signal receiver. What the signal does, it basically will send a notification of some kind of behavior. So you could set up your own kind of, these are called reactions. You could create them when you create a signal. It has these options. So these reactions will allow you to kind of maybe trigger functions in your game. So yeah, that's pretty much what the signal does. The signal looks like this, and the reaction will be sent to this object that you bound it to. And that object is going to receive that reaction, that signal, or notification. A lot of words I could use. It will receive it, and then it will spit out the function or behavior that you wanted to do. So yeah, that's what the signals do. It's a good way to execute timelines in parallel. So instead of using a control track, which is dependent on the time of the track, the timeline that is within. You could trigger another timeline completely parallel, and it's gonna happen completely independently from the other one. So this, for example, I have an example. I have a signal here on this timeline that holds, well, this object itself has a receiver, but this is what it looks like. It's just a normal component. And when I click on the signal, I choose what kind of behavior I want to do. In this case, I just want to play this soundtrack timeline just because I wanted music. So if I click on this, you'll see that this is a timeline. So yeah, all this does is it's gonna trigger, it's saying play this timeline, and then this timeline is gonna happen independently. It doesn't care about the progression. Here, it's just gonna do its own thing. All right, and yeah, and here I'm not going to go too much into details, but you can also create your own marker signals if you want to do your own custom behaviors. All you have to do is make a class that inherits from marker. In fact, signal, which is given by Unity itself, inherits from markers. It's a marker itself. Yeah, you can watch a video on how to do it. This is just like a 6-minute video, but yeah, put it simply, all you have to do is create a class that inherits from marker that you can add to your timeline. It also has to inherit from iNotification. It's just going to tell it to send a notification when the clip gets hit. And then you need to make another class that inherits from iNotification receiver. So that's going to tell the marker what to do. And And you can also make your own custom marker tracks if you want to like organize it well. But yeah, I'm not going to go too much into detail because it's better if you watch a video. This one I'm not going to go too much into detail either. But this slide is just saying in the back end, behind the scenes, timeline is just a set. It's like a graph of instructions, and those graph nodes are called playable assets. So it's just telling when you're starting a timeline. It's, for example, with these 3 animation clips, it's just telling it to play this one, and then this one, and then this one. But this isn't. I'm just gonna briefly say this because for the next slide, actually. Yeah. Okay. Because I'm going to explain how you could code your own custom timeline features to make some cool stuff like dialogue, or you could do navigation instructions. You could also make weird clips that will manipulate how the timeline is going to progress, like if you want it to go faster or pause or loop around and stuff like that. You could do a lot of really weird things. But if you want to make your own custom timeline feature, there are 3 things that you need. You need the track. You need to define the track, what it is. You have to define the clip, and you have to define the behavior, so what's going to happen. So very briefly, the track will inherit from a track asset. The clip will inherit from a playable asset. If you remember the previous slide, you saw that it was a graph filled with playable assets. And then the behavior you inherit from playable behavior. So the first one, track asset. I'm just going to go through like general functions that you might need. The first one, track color. You want your timeline to look beautiful, and you want nice, pretty colors to make it very easy to look at. So you can modify the track color right here, the track color, and then you put your RGB value. You have to define your clip type. So as you saw in here, yeah, each track holds clips. So you have to define what kind of clip that you want. So here, for example, in this example, I'm making a dialogue track. So I need the dialogue clip. You need a track binding type. This is not always, it depends what kind of thing you're making, but this is just the reference that you might need for your behavior to work. If you were to go back here, for example, the animator, the binding reference is the player. So, where was I? And then another important function is get clips. This just gives you access to all of the clips within your timeline, so you could manipulate them. And then, yeah, so as you can see in this example, the dialogue track inherits from the track asset. And then in here, I create the track, and then here I'm just going through the clips and giving information on their end time. I don't remember why, but that's the example I gave. All right, the next one, the clip assets. So in here, they all inherit from a playable asset. As you can see here, the dialogue clip inherits from a playable asset. So this will define what the clips can do. I feel like I did a mistake here, but yeah. And yeah, the main function that you might need to implement yourself is the create playable function. This will just allow you to create the next thing that we want, the behavior. So in here, create playable, which is creating the clip. It's creating the behavior. And I just added an extra information here, but If you've noticed, a lot of clips have these kind of start and duration, these in, these out duration type settings. Maybe you don't need that. So if you want to get rid of that, all you have to do is extend from this iTimeline clip asset like this. And then it will allow you to put clip claps, none. And that will just remove the settings that you might not need. So yeah. And then lastly, the playable behavior. So this is just going to tell you what happens when your playhead in the timeline hits your clip. It does the bulk of the work. So important functions that you might need. Well, first of all, you have to inherit from playable behaviors, you can see here. But the important functions that you might need is on playable create. So once the clip has been created, you could instantiate what different variables that you might need. So before getting into like the bulk of the work, you might need like different settings to be implemented first. So that's where you'd want to do it. Then there's process frame. This is kind of just the update function. It will happen every frame. And this is where all of the behavior is probably going to happen. So, yeah. And then there's on behavior pause and on behavior play. So on behavior pause is going to be called when the end of the clip gets reached. So if this playhead goes all the way to the end of, let's say, this clip, right here, and goes and hits that, it's going to call the onBehaviorPause function. And then, as you might guess, on behavior play, it will be invoked at the beginning of the clip. So when the playhead hits the start of the clip like that. These also get called when, if, for example, you pause the timeline and restart it. So if you pause it, it's going to go into that, and if you restart it, it's going to go into that. That's pretty much all you have to do. What is this? Oh, I'm just going to really briefly go into this. So as we saw before, behind the scenes, a timeline is like a graph of playable assets. So you also have some graph functions. So there's on graph start, on graph stop. These basically are just saying when the timeline starts, this is what gets called. When the timeline stops or ends, this is what gets called. So you could use those functions as well. There's also prepare data. So if you want to just initialize a couple of variables that you might need, you can use this function. And then prepare frame, which I don't remember what it does. I think it's like a I guess it happens before the next frame gets.
It cues the action.
Yeah, I think it's like it waits. It's a pre-frame initialization function type thing, I guess. I'm just going to show you a quick example of a custom timeline clip. So I'm going to show you the dialogue one. It's probably like the best one. It's my favorite. I'm just going to show you actually what it looks like. So I have the dialogue track here, which is custom made. And then each clip, I have different settings that I made myself. You have the character name, their dialogue, the font size, and if you want to pause the timeline when it reaches the end. And if you'll see here, I have dialogue track. If it will open. Dark mode.
Sorry.
What's this?
Oh, C# extensions.
Cancel. I don't care. I just want this. Okay, there you go. So So as you can see, I have dialog track, and it extends from track asset. And then I have dialog clip that extends from playable asset. That has the dialog behavior, and then it creates it here. And then I have the dialog behavior here that extends from playable behavior, and then it does a whole bunch of stuff in here and a kind of update function. And yeah, that's a quick example. I provided this project on the Discord server. If you haven't joined yet, I encourage you to join it because yeah, we're gonna have links. We're gonna post links and updates on that. So if you want access to the project I'm working with right now, you can find it there. And all right, and that's it for examples. I'm not gonna go too much into it because there's a lot of things that you can do with custom tracks. But yeah, just to conclude, the limitations of timeline. So there's no branching support. So yes, you could do dialogues and cool cutscenes, but you can't do like decision trees. So if for example, you want to do a dialogue with like different options and it will trigger different types of dialogues, you can't really do that on a timeline because it's purely linear. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Be wary of that. And yeah, you can't put two clips on top of each other with like two different options, depending on different conditions. Oh yeah, you can't put timeline assets within another, but you can put playable directors. What I mean by that is, so like I showed at the beginning of the presentation, when you create a timeline, it gets added to your folder as a playable, right? Like this dialogue timeline, for example, is one. This playable, this file here doesn't actually hold the data of what you're using in your scene. Like it doesn't have any of this data. It doesn't know what objects you want to use. So if you want to put it inside another timeline like this, you'll see it won't let you because it's lacking that data. But like I said before, if you do want to put a timeline within a timeline, all you have to do is drag and drop your all you have to do is drag and drop like this, and then make a control track like that. You could probably also make your own custom timeline tracks and clips that does the behavior that you might want. But yeah, that's something to keep in mind. So pausing or ending a timeline here prematurely it will stop the timeline very abruptly. So if you're, for example, animating a character and pausing within that animator, your character might like stay like stuck in a pose or something like that. So it might not look natural in game. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because in this project there are examples of that exactly. There's let's say this timeline has a custom track called a time machine, and what is doing it gives you the ability to loop backwards or pause the timeline. But if you were to pause it in the middle of, if I were to put a pause clip right in here, my talking animation is just going to get frozen into place. So you got to make sure that you're using them properly. If tracks, if you make custom tracks that manipulate gameplay behaviors, there's no ability to preview them. So if you didn't notice, there's actually in here, you'll see that you can actually preview the animations as I scroll through. I'm not even playing the game, it's like previewing it for me. But if I were to make a custom, let's say navigation track that will tell the character to move from one position to the other, it won't be previewed because it's it's a gameplay like behavior. So you would have to tell the preview kind of functionality what you want to see. So yeah, keep that in mind. Animation track in the timeline overrides the animator of an object. I responded to that guy's question earlier, but if anything that is being played here is going to override any of their like default animations. So yeah. Let's say I could show you an example. I don't know if I have time though. But handling parallel timelines that depend on each other is not very intuitive, but can be done. So, like I showed before, it's possible to implement control tracks to play a timeline within a timeline, or you could use the signals to trigger other timelines, but it's not super intuitive because visually you don't really know what's going on. Like all you have right here, for example, this little peg, which is playing my dialogue timeline. It's visually, I have no idea what's going on in there. It's gonna do its own thing. So, yeah. And then the last thing, everything, all of the game objects that are involved in the timeline have to exist in the hierarchy. So it's kind of tricky if you have, let's say, things that spawn at runtime. They only exist when you press play. It won't work with timeline because, well, they don't exist yet, basically. So if you want to use things that spawn at runtime, you have to make your own implementation to handle that. So everything needs to exist in the scene hierarchy. And I have a couple useful links. I will post the PowerPoint on the Discord and I guess on the Microsoft Teams chat. So there's these. This is a good one for like introductory of timeline and what it could do and different examples. Like I said before, how to make custom markers, very useful. And this is the source project that I've used for this presentation. This is a great tool. I love this video. It has many different examples of how you can use timeline, and it also gives you access to the projects, so you can play around with them. So yeah. Before I finish, I had a request from the Interactive Society of Dalhousie Interactive Society. If you wanted to say something.
Yes.
Yes.
Just wanted to make a quick announcement. There's now a game development society here at Dalhousie called Dalhousie Game Dev. I have the Discord invite here if you'd be interested. We'll make some workshops, some events, and we are also going to have a studio part, which would be a student-run game development studio.
Yeah. Everyone join Dalhousie Interactive Society and their Discord. All right.
Put the link to your Discord in the chat.
Yeah.
Do you have the Discord link?
It's in the chat.
Oh, it is?
I'm asking in the chat.
Oh, we
In the Microsoft Teams chat.
Gotcha.
All right. Does anyone have any questions? Now's the time to ask. I know it's like a lot of information to take in, but yeah. All right. Is there any like questions in the chat or something? Or?
I'm just letting people know that if there's a question online, I will read it out.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I know that like all of these kind of how to make custom tracks is like a bit overwhelming, but there's a lot of resources, and especially on those links that I showed you that show you how to make your own. And it's not like as complicated as it might seem. And if you don't make your own custom tracks, like the basic ones are offered like by default by Unity are enough to make really cool cutscenes. So I really encourage you to use those as well. So yeah.
All right, so before we go, I just wanted to remind you all of all the amazing tutorials that are available. And I'm just going to quickly open the poster instead of actually reading it out. Sorry, so many stuff. All right, so please join us. We have satellite sites. There's the bit.ly link. In the chat, you'll find I added in little explanations as we're going. And you'll also find the DAL Interactive Gameplay Society Discord in there. If you had questions like what is an NPC, all of that information, I put the notes in the chat for you. So do review those and do come out to the next tutorials. So we have tutorials. Again, today you've seen the one from. So the first two, if you've missed them, are available on the Discord already, and we will make the links as a YouTube channel. Wednesday, tomorrow at 4 p.m., we have a virtual intro to Unity from Ben, also from Ubisoft, helping us plan this game jam. We really appreciate them. And then finally, for people who want to do a little bit more advanced coding, we have a How to Make VR Games by our very own Mara Machuca. And it will give you kind of a good lead up to the game jam. At the game jam, we'll see mentors like Rose, who we're so lucky to have, as well as mentors from DAL, your own professors, and some graduate students, including Soraya over here. So I really am happy to see you all come out, and thank you so much for your attention. I'm just going to double check if there are any more questions. We can stick around for like 5-10 minutes. And feel free to ask them, especially I know it's hard to ask questions in front of a group when it's being recorded online.
Yeah. You could also we could ask questions about like unrelated to the presentation, like if you have questions about Ubisoft or Unity, like different things from Unity as well that I didn't mention. Feel free to ask around. Yeah.
So can we get a big round of applause for Rosie? All right, thank you so much. All right, so I'm just going to end this recording. Thank you, all the online people.
Thank you.
You had a bunch of people saying thank you in the chat, but a lot of the chat questions I could answer, so I did so during the time.
It was like more about the game, I guess.